All right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Thursday, October 12th. We're doing it live. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, I'm Pat. So, Clayton, this is the biggest box office weekend we have had since Barbenheimer. I mean, we have been salivating for this. It's here. And so we couldn't just do it ourselves. I mean, we could have, but we chose not to. We're bringing in a very special guest. So, you know this guy. He is the editor and movie critic for ScreenCrush. He is everyone knows him from IFC News. He was an IFC News correspondent. And now, most importantly, he's an author. It's hard to get higher than that. He's an author of the new book, Opposable Thumbs. It is a book about Siskel and Ebert. Everyone, welcome. Matt Singer is here. Hey, Matt.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me. An honor to be here and to have my credits listed in such a cohesive and well done fashion.
So you're on the publicity tour now for Opposable Thumbs. Comes out October 24th. Have you already done shows where people have butchered your credits? Have you been subject to listening to just rambling? They don't know what the credits are. They're saying crush screen. They're opposable some things. Have you had to listen to that yet?
No, I don't think anyone's butchered it yet, but that would be pretty fun if somebody had absolutely no idea who I was. One time many years ago, I remember this would be over 15 years ago. This is like right when I started at IFC doing like on-camera stuff. I had been there, just kind of fell into doing on-camera stuff. It mostly dumb luck. I was like an intern. I wrote for their website, and they needed somebody, and I had done one episode of one MTV show, and I hit it off with the producers and auditioned, and somehow I got this job. And like they were like, "Okay, you're hired, and if anyone wants to interview you, we're gonna get you some interviews." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then they had me do like a radio show. I don't remember who with. It was on like over the phone. This is pre-Zoom days where you could just talk to people and literally like see them.
Right.
And they were like, "Okay, sit here. We're gonna call in, and then they're gonna." And it was me, and I want to say actually also Allison Bales, who at the time was also an IFC on-air host. She had this monthly show about like what was new in theaters and stuff. And so they had us do a couple of these, I guess. And then this one we call in, and a producer or whoever answers and is like, "Okay, great. You'll be on with Joe or whatever in a minute. Just hang tight." And they put us on hold, and we're waiting. And, a few minutes later, the guy comes on and he's like, "Hey, welcome back to Joe and the Bear in the Morning. And
boy.
And who are we talking to now?" And we're like, "It's Matt and Allison." And it's like, "What are we talking about?" Like, he had literally no idea who we were.
Right. He wanted to talk about like Bikini Babes.
He had no idea who we were. We had no idea what we were there to talk about. And at least in my memory, he's like, "Okay, great. We'll be right back after this." And like hung up on us. That was like the entire interview. They didn't come back to us. They literally just like dropped us and went to a commercial or something. And it was a complete waste of everyone's time. It was such a butchery of who we were that he didn't even talk to us. He didn't know who we were, why we were there, and decided to just punt the whole thing.
Do you think your publisher is going to book you on Joe and the Bear?
I would love to get some sweet revenge and be like, "It's time, Joe. Get your bear out here and talk to me about Siskel and Ebert."
Oh, so it was, you think the co-host was a legitimate live bear? This was not a nickname.
That was a name I pulled out of the sky just now. Gotcha. I don't remember who was the person we were talking to. It was just some, morning DJ voice guy.
Right.
But it'd be pretty sweet if there was a bear involved. I would love to be interviewed by a bear at some point.
You need a gimmick.
It would be tough to get revenge on somebody that would totally forget that it even happened.
Right. That's true. Right. But I would know.
You would know.
And that's what matters.
You stuck it to them.
Right.
So you wrote a book about Siskel and Ebert, and I can't imagine anyone who listens to the BO Boys is not, at least, if not a fan of Siskel and Ebert, lived through it like the three of us did. We're Siskel and Ebert generation. But if you are a movie fan, that name, I think, still means something. Siskel and Ebert as a show, they stopped in 99 or so was Siskel's last year. And, Ebert continued it and kept writing till 2010, 2012. So they've been gone for a long time, but I can't imagine being a movie fan and that name doesn't mean something to you now. I think even a young 20-year-old Swiftie knows Siskel and Ebert.
I would hope so, and if not, well, now they will, because we're going to talk about it. But yeah, I would think that their legacy looms pretty large, and based on the interviews I have done, Joe and the Bear notwithstanding, it feels like, yes, there's a lot of people who still remember and still have a lot of affection for this show. A lot of people who, like me, grew up watching the show, loving the show. It was their real entree into the world of movies. It's what got them interested in movies, got them interested in film criticism. So yeah, I mean, yes, they've been gone for a while now. The dates you gave were quite accurate, but I think that for a lot of people, that name Siskel and Ebert, it still is, it's like synonymous with film criticism.
So we've got a lot of Swifties listening to this episode,
Sure.
because they are searching anything Taylor Swift. They find the BO Boys, probably, hundreds of thousands, millions of new listeners just for this episode. Give a message to the Swifties. Why on October 24th should they storm the bookstores, get Opposable Thumbs, the way they're going to be storming the movie theaters this weekend to see Taylor Swift, the ERAS tour of the movie?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, the film is not directly referenced in the book, but I feel like, in a way, it's sort of obliquely referenced in, as we talk about the totality of the history of cinema, of which this film is certainly part of. And, from a box office perspective, it certainly will be a pretty interesting moment in the history of box office, because this movie is going to apparently make a whole lot of money. And so, yeah, if you want a greater understanding of the world of movies and how we got to this point, the book is certainly about Siskel and Ebert, but it is also about the impact they had on the world of movies and how they changed movies and movie culture and film criticism. And so I think it would just add a lot of very rich context to the cinematic side of the Taylor Swift ERAS tour film.
Yeah, a lot of Swifties are becoming movie fans, so this is a great go back, learn the history of movies after your first movie.
If you're interested, this is a great resource.
They're broadening their horizons. Football fans, movie fans.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Matt, are you encouraging people at these book events you're going to have, which I'm sure you're going to have book events, to dress in their favorite eras of Siskel and Ebert, right? Dress like PBS era Siskel and Ebert, or syndicated, Siskel and Ebert. And then when they were, I don't want to say bankrolled by Disney, but they were working for a company that was owned by Disney. I mean, there's so many different eras of Siskel and Ebert. Is that going to be something you encourage? A lot of, sweaters and things like that. The different eras.
I mean, I haven't yet, but it's a great idea. I would love to take pictures with people in Siskel and Ebert cosplay. That would be fantastic. I mean, I feel like every time I do any sort of appearance in front of a camera, I'm sort of subtly cosplaying as Siskel and Ebert. I still think of that as the uniform of a film critic. I shot something with Pat. I wore a V-neck sweater over a button-down shirt. That is like, I could have worn and I almost wore a blazer. It really was almost like literally like that. That is the uniform. And for years I've done appearances, and for years when I've done TV show appearances and things like that, that's what I wear, because that's what Siskel and Ebert wore. And to me, that's the uniform. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, if people dress like they go really overboard and they wear a wig or whatever,
that'd be great.
I would be even more excited to take a picture with them. Yes. So absolutely. If anyone wants to come, and we do have events, if you go to my website, matt-singer.net, there's a whole list of all the events we're doing right now. And yes, I would be very excited if someone came dressed in costume, and I would absolutely take many pictures with that person.
The person who got mattsinger.com, do you know if that is their name or if they were just a singer named Matt advertising their wares?
I don't know. I don't think there actually is one. Somebody's just like, I guess, has the rights
Mm,
to it, I suppose. Because I never had a website in my entire life. Maybe, I guess, maybe like decades ago, I had like a GeoCities or something.
right.
But I do so much writing on various websites and stuff. I never really felt like I needed one. But then with the book, I was, it was advised to me that maybe that would be a good idea. So yeah.
Got it. To
But
publish it.
there's a lot of other Matt Singers out there, actually. Yes, it's a very common name. There's like people who are involved in politics. There's like a lawyer. I think there's maybe a fashion designer or somebody in
Okay.
the fashion industry. Like there's a lot of Matt Singers. There's like a Canadian hockey player, something like that. So if I Google myself, yeah, sometimes there's a lot of them. I've often thought it would be very interesting to like go around and meet all these other people who share my name. I
I
always
mean,
thought
that
that
would
would be
be a
something fun
great
to
thing
do.
that would be a great thing for the book tour is you'll take a picture with anyone who dresses as Siskel and Ebert, and you'll take a picture with anyone whose name, and they have to show you a driver's license
Right.
or
I
some
got to see
state
government
ID.
ID.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a thing. A lot of people love to pretend to be named Matt Singer. It's a real
Yes.
problem.
Yeah,
But yeah, if
especially
they've
with this
got the
picture
government
online.
ID, sure, I would do it.
So before we get into the Taylor Swift movie, one last Siskel and Ebert thing is I looked up the 3 highest grossing domestic grossing movies that they ever covered. Because if you look at the all-time domestic box office list, it skews so heavily towards, the last 20 years or so. But the 3 highest grossing films that Siskel and Ebert ever covered were the 9th biggest movie of all time, Titanic. And then
Right.
you'd have to go down to E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and the other one is Star Wars
Right. I was
77,
going to
which
say
they
for sure Star Wars would be in there.
and it looks like they covered. I watched the Siskel and Ebert segment from Star Wars 77. Looks like they covered it when there was a holiday re-release of the
Mhm.
film. So those 3 films.
And
So I know
they
that
also reviewed the special edition when that came back out. I remember.
yes,
Remember that quite vividly. I don't know if that still counts for the purposes of our box office calculation here, but I remember that was. I mean, certainly those movies coming out were a big deal to me, and I do remember them reviewing it as well.
Oh yeah.
um so those 3 films, they reviewed all of them. I know the answer to this, Clayton and Matt, you don't.
Okay.
How many thumbs went up amongst those 3 films? So there's 6 possible thumbs.
And it was Titanic, Star Wars, and what was the third one?
And E.T.
And E.T.
So are we supposed to guess who said thumbs up and thumbs down in this, or
Yes,
just
I mean, well,
number of thumbs?
give me a total number of thumbs, and then obviously, if you think there were thumbs down from, you could tell me who
But
and
are
for
we
which movie.
ascribing them to Gene or
Yes,
Roger?
yes, I'd love to.
Okay.
I'd love to hear that prediction. But of course, there are 6 possible thumbs across these 3 films.
Okay, the Star Wars one is interesting because if they're doing the re-release, there's so much time between the original and that it could skew.
So you think they changed thumbs? Well, I'm
I
basing it
feel
on
like they
the I'm
changed his
basing it on the
people.
70. I'm basing it on the 77 review.
Okay,
Yeah,
and you have definitive thumbs for the
I have
77 review.
definitive recommendations across.
Okay. Well, Matt, you're the expert here, but who would you like to go first with this
I
guess?
mean,
Or
I'm
would
just
you
going to
like
say
me to go first?
six thumbs up. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Both thumbs. Okay.
So Clayton, do you think there were any thumbs down amongst those 6 thumbs? Star
Well,
Wars,
I know.
E.T.,
Okay,
Titanic.
so I know that Gene Siskel's one of his favorite movies was Saturday Night Fever.
Yes.
So he's more of a disco guy than a Star Wars guy.
Okay. Covered heavily in Matt's book, Opposable Thumbs. A lot of
Yes.
Gene Siskel, Saturday Night Fever anecdotes.
The whole saga of the suit.
The whole saga
True.
of the
That
suit
is,
covered.
I do talk about the suit. Yes,
Yeah,
that is in there.
So Swifties, you will hear about the Saturday Night Fever suit and Gene Siskel.
Yep.
Okay, so I think Star Wars, I think there's 1 thumbs up.
Okay.
And I think oh God, this is hard. I think it's Roger.
Okay.
Titanic, I think it's 2 thumbs up because I
Okay.
just think they respect Cameron. And then what was the other movie?
E.T.
E.T. Oh, 2 thumbs up because it's Spielberg.
Okay. Matt nailed it, of course. The author of the book nailed it. 6, they loved all 3 of these movies. And interesting note on 2 of these for Titanic in their review, they went gaga for Leo DiCaprio. Gene Siskel pegged him as a future huge star right off the bat. A little cold on Kate Winslet, actually. But they pegged Leo as going to be a big star. And in their Star Wars review, and Matt, if you want to talk to their outlook on blockbusters in the movie business, Gene Siskel did end his Star Wars review. He loved the movie, said it was a fantastic time, but he did plead to Hollywood. Remember, we also need serious adult pictures. So Siskel and Ebert, they saw the future. They saw the future there. So before we get to Taylor Swift, Matt, Siskel and Ebert on Blockbusters, did you pick up any kind of thread? Were they sort of, we saw in that Star Wars review, a little antsy about the commercialization of films and losing serious pictures, or were they generally open to big blockbuster box office grossers?
Well, I think they were open to good ones, as those
Mhm.
reviews suggest, but they were also quite skeptical of the blockbusterification of Hollywood, let's say. That was often a refrain, was where are the movies for adults? Where are the movies, the serious films that we are used to? Because you have to remember that they both sort of got their jobs as film critics in the late 60s. They really got cooking as print film critics in Chicago in the early 1970s, one of the most exciting times for American film and international film in history. And it was not exactly a period of big blockbusters. That period is now known as this time of great experimentation and giving young filmmakers a chance to make movies the way they wanted, with their own, new ideas and new ways of shooting, new ways of editing, that's the new Hollywood period, and that's sort of what it's famous for. And so I do think when a few years later, Jaws and Star Wars come along and they do kind of rewrite the rules of Hollywood, they do sometimes seem very sort of frustrated with, that there's so many big budget movies and there's less movies and less oxygen to talk about the movies that are smaller. That is something that if you watch a lot of episodes, which I certainly did for researching for the book, that comes up. I mean, there's no way around that. Like they absolutely do it. And often it often feels like with blockbusters, they almost go in, sort of wary. They're assuming, the worst in a way. If it's another big budget movie, it really has to win them over. That doesn't mean that they, automatically dismiss those movies. They gave lots of those movies thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. Some that might surprise you. They gave 2 thumbs up to Speed 2 Cruise Control. They gave 2 thumbs up to Con Air, which I actually think is a masterpiece of that kind of movie, and much better than Speed 2. Right, they nailed it. It's much better than Speed 2 Cruise Control. But would you have been surprised if I had said they gave that movie 2 thumbs down? No, probably not, just because of what it is, and it's, So yeah, it's not like they were close-minded about this, but maybe a little bit wary is maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, you touch on something here because we're the BO boys. Obviously, we talk about box office, and these two, Gene and Roger, I mean, they could make or break a movie in a way. I mean, studios were afraid of them and their thumbs because well, maybe not Pat as much because he's a millennial, but I'm definitely Gen X.
I'm also Gen X.
So, would look at those thumbs and watch that show and say, oh, Gene liked it or Roger didn't like it or whatever, and make their decision based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those thumbs were on the posters. I mean, we grew up in the era when the thumbs, if they coincided, you rarely saw a one thumb up on a poster. That's a movie that's really reaching.
Right.
But if it was a two thumbs up, that got itself on the poster, on the newspaper ad, the print ad. Swifties out there, newspapers were these things that we would buy every day. The news would be printed and there would be movie ads in there. Siskel and Ebert's thumbs up would be in the movie ads. I do wonder, we all wish Gene and Roger were alive today and they had a podcast. They'd probably be on The Ringer and they'd have a podcast on there and it'd be huge. They might not love the BO boys. They would see, there's this podcast talking about box office. They probably would be hesitant. There might be a little bit of a podcast feud, even though we loved them, but we do wish we all had the opportunity to be feuding with Siskel and Ebert over podcasts. But I think they'd be happy about what's about to happen this weekend, because in the end, Siskel and Ebert wanted movies to succeed. And I think they'd be happy that this Taylor Swift The Eras Tour, the movie, is going to give a big, much needed shot in the arm to the movie theaters. It's been a rough couple of months. Now, Matt, you are the editor of ScreenCrush, and so you cover the movie business. What is your take on these last few months? We had the Barbenheimer gigantic, cultural phenomenon. First time in a while, movies have been at the center of the culture of Barbenheimer. It's been a slow August and especially September. So just in terms of the business, have you been waiting for this Taylor Swift movie? Have you been, are you excited that finally it seems like movies, in whatever way this is a movie, is going to be the center of the culture again?
Right. I mean, when you put it that way, it is always nice when your livelihood depends on the ongoing health of the movie business. That there is a movie that's going to gross, $150 million in a weekend, just in terms of reasserting the importance of movies. And yes, it's going to get a lot of people, young and old, into movie theaters, and that is also a great thing as well. So yeah, from that perspective, absolutely. I hope all of those people who go to see it this weekend, and I'm not planning to see it this weekend, but I have two young daughters who I'm going to see it at some point. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. I'm actually kind of curious to see it. I don't believe they've had any press screenings here in New York, at least that I've heard about. If there was one, I probably would have gone to see it quite happily and seen it for myself that way. But yeah, I hope that if people go to see that movie that don't make it a regular habit to go to the movie theater, that maybe they see a trailer that intrigues them. Maybe they have such a great time that they make it a more regular thing, not just when Taylor Swift has a new concert documentary. And yes, for that reason, what you say about Gene and Roger liking the movie, I mean, we can't know what they would have thought of the movie, but of the idea of that many people caring that much to go to a movie theater, especially these days, yes, they would have been very happy with that aspect of it alone. I think that's a very safe thing to say. I don't think that would be I don't think they would take issue with that idea at all. I think they would be quite happy to see, just like with Barbenheimer, I think the same idea, that idea that, people were, that enthused, engaged, excited to be in a movie theater, not just with movies, which they loved movies, and they were big supporters of home video and VHS and Laserdisc and DVD, but they also really loved the theatrical experience. And even though it was not quite as seemingly imperiled or endangered as it is today, keeping theaters, healthy they talked about that on the show even back then, for sure. So yeah, I think for those reasons, they would have been quite happy to have this movie. I would love to have known what they wouldn't you love to have seen Siskel and Ebert's review of Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour? I would be so excited to see that.
Yeah. I God, like, we all don't want AI, but I do wish there was some kind of way of having some kind of facsimile of a Siskel and Ebert review for pretty much every movie that comes out. I mean, my thought on most movies I watch is I do wish I could then watch the Siskel and Ebert review of it on Sunday night at 12 o'clock on Channel 5.
Right.
But at the same time, I also do not want some companies to feed in every episode of Siskel and Ebert.
Don't do that.
I don't want that.
You just
I
gave them a terrible idea, Pat.
I don't want that. And listen, I know that our show is listened to by many AI engineers, CEOs, and it's an unfortunate truth, but don't do that. Don't do that. No. Even though we kind of love it, don't do that with the Siskel and Ebert catalog. I do think that Siskel and Ebert I think they would structure the episode of their show with the Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, the movie review to then highlight some other movies that they really want you to see that are out there. And so right now, I'm not sure even what that would be. They'd probably push, and next week go see Killers of the Flower Moon, or, maybe there's a documentary out now that they push you towards. But I do think that's what they would do, is try and get people to make sure to see some smaller, Wallace Shawn starring movie that's also out there right now.
Well, they would do also the thing where it'd be, what are little scene music or concert films that are available on home video, which of course now would be streaming. Some gems that people might not have known about. I mean, and that's the thing with them, is that they did talk about Blockbusters. They did talk about what was in the zeitgeist, but for pre-internet, you didn't know about some of these smaller films unless they talked about it.
Right. So this movie, you threw out the number there of 150 million. I saw on your site on ScreenCrush, one of the writers on the site talking about this weekend pegged it around that. So it's interesting because the prognosticators and the trackers have really had a hard time with this movie because the pre-sales are gigantic. They've pre-sold $100 million worth of tickets this weekend. So we know it's breaking that. But people are very hesitant to go much further than that because there's that thought out there that the only people who want to see this are the people who already bought tickets, are the hardcore Taylor Swift fans. So I know, Clayton, before we got on air, you're feeling, I think, a little in that direction. I mean, do you feel like this movie is just for the fans who've already bought the tickets? Don't think that it's going to cross over? No, you're shaking your head. No, you didn't say that. I'm putting words in your mouth. So where are you at first, Clayton, on the pre-sales and the potential for this weekend to be significantly bigger than that?
I mean, I think it is one of those. I mean, some of the comps people were talking about are like, Barbie and No Way Home, both of which totally outstripped their tracking. And I think it is one of those things where I don't know what the limit here is, especially now because the announcement that there's Thursday previews, which was not a thing previously. So, I mean, now we're talking an extra $20 million or something possibly coming out of those. Who knows? So I do think the sky's the limit here. I mean, the limit basically is how many theaters are showing this, really, because this is going to be heavily front loaded. Obviously, you want to be the first to see this film. And that's why the Thursday previews getting sprung on fans feels a little crappy to me. Like that was a bad look because I think, she wanted to open this movie on October 13th because that's her lucky number is 13. And then somebody probably said, I mean, we got all these Thursday. I mean, we got Thursday. Nobody's going to see Exorcist. We could show this movie on Thursday. And she probably said, okay, that makes sense. I'll do it. Numbers are numbers, whatever.
Do you think Taylor Swift said numbers are numbers? Because she said, does that feel like numbers are numbers to her? The tickets are being sold for $19.89.
I think is that really actually happening though? Because I know in New York City, we're not paying, $19.89 for that. We're paying a premium.
Yeah. Well, that would be a reduction. But I do think that seems to be the case. Most cities they're selling, which is an upcharge for most places. A non-premium screen, $19.89 is still an upcharge. So they're making more per ticket than an average movie would make. Uh,
the other thing though is
Mhm.
the people buying out entire theaters, like
Yes.
buying out entire screening rooms, is also something that is going to happen with this film at such a higher rate than other times. I mean, COVID was a time where people were buying out, viewing rooms, so that was a thing. But you weren't packing everybody in there. You weren't packing all of your sorority sisters in there, or
Right, right. Or your frat brothers or
your frat
whoever.
brothers, or
Yeah, yeah.
your, various clubs for people.
Right.
The
So
members of your senior citizen community, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
I mean,
Totally.
who
There's
knows?
gonna be buses from
The church buses could be lining up and parking outside these theaters. We just really don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
what the reach here is, because I do think there's a very vocal group of people driving interest in this, which is the Swifties. But
Mhm.
Taylor Swift sells so many records, and it's not just the Swifties. So there's going to be less vocal people who are going to go see this movie that are not talking about it as much. So
Right.
I don't know. I mean, 150 does sound like it's very possible, obviously, but it could do 200.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
The Barbie number was 155.
Yeah.
And it would be incredible if this movie got higher than the Barbie number, which at that point, that seemed unfathomable that
Mhm.
movie opened at 155. I mean, Matt, I'll throw to you. We're talking about this movie having these giant pre-sales. They're opening the Thursday numbers. It's a happening. And do you think that is a detraction for people to go on opening weekend? Or is that the type of thing where people are going to want to be part of this happening, even if they're not Taylor Swift fans? It starts to become a thing of, hey, there's a long line for that. Let me get on the back of the line.
Mhm.
Do you think there is some attraction towards just being part of the thing this weekend, seeing what everyone's dressing up like? They don't even recognize any of these eras of Taylor Swift. They're just like, why are these people dressed up
Right.
like this?
Right.
I got to go buy a ticket and find out.
Right. The ERA tour, why is she doing a tour about earn run average? It doesn't make any
Mhm.
sense.
Sure.
That sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
I think that that's a good question, and it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. My feeling, based on nothing but my own just intuition, my gut feeling, is the happening aspect really. I mean, that's really for I have a real hard time saying Taylor Swift for some reason. I don't know why. For her audience, I think, really. But she has a gigantic, enormous,
Right.
mega gigundo audience. So
Mhm.
it's like, if for the people who maybe didn't pre-order a ticket or thought they would, like, I could see the excitement around it encouraging those few stragglers who didn't pre-order a ticket to go. If you're to me, it seems maybe that if you are curious, like, I would put myself in the category of, like, I know Taylor Swift, I know some of her songs,
Mhm.
I have nothing against her. I like listening to her music with my kids sometimes for the songs that
Right.
they know. But it's not like I've ever gone to one of her shows, or you know what I mean. Like, to me, it would be, and maybe I'm most interested in just seeing this movie that so many people are seeing, because it is going to end up being one of the biggest movies of the year in terms of
Mhm.
sheer box office. I might be more inclined to wait, because I don't necessarily want to be the one weird old guy in that
Mm.
crowd. So I would like to see the phenomenon, try to understand it as best I can, but I don't want to be the middle-aged guy who's like, the one,
Right.
I perhaps
The
if I
guy who has
brought
to squeeze in the middle of the aisle
right.
and no one wants you.
Right.
W
I
Is
guess
there
if I was going with my kids, then maybe that would be less of an issue. But if I'm going by myself, just as a sociological and
Right.
critical film thing, I would be waiting personally.
So
Mhm.
Clayton, are you gonna, because I'm seeing this next weekend, but I'm seeing it with my two nieces. So I'm totally covered. I'm not gonna be the one weird guy. I've got kids in there, so I'm covered. Matt, it seems like you're taking your daughter, so you're able to go see this. Clayton, will you be seeing this movie this weekend? And will you be that one weird guy? Because, we had a poll, Matt, a month or two ago, and our fans spoke and they said Clayton did need to see this movie. He needed to see it. It was an overwhelming vote.
Absolutely, I agree.
He needed to see it in the theater. So
For
Clayton,
science. Yeah.
for science,
Unfortunately, Matt's vote doesn't count. And it's a controversial. It was a controversial result, let's just say. So we're still, it's still up in the air. But on my own volition, I feel I do need to see this film, and I was gonna see it with a friend of ours, and we realized that this isn't playing during the week. This is only playing on the weekends. So
okay.
therefore, we have to
that's
make
interesting.
plans that aren't. We were going to go see it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Now that is out of the question. So
I didn't
think
even know that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
think
weekend only affair, and they did announce that when the movie was first announced 2 months ago. I think a lot of us have forgotten that because we just assume movies play all week, but that always
Yes.
was the plan, that this
So
was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday affair.
I do think, as Matt has said, I mean, that is one of the reasons I may not see this movie, is because I need to have a buffer. I
Right.
need to bring a buffer.
Right.
And who is this buffer going to be?
Right.
And
right.
what is the thinking behind only showing it on weekends? What do they get out of that plan?
That's a great question.
So I think originally when this was announced a few months ago, I mean, I'm sure they knew this would be big. I think the size of it has probably been even bigger than they could have expected. And there's probably some amount of everything Taylor does needs to be a giant success. And there was probably some thought of it'll play best on the weekends. Let's only show it on the weekends. And maybe there was some thought of, listen, the weird guys who go by themselves, they're going to go on a Tuesday, and we just want to avoid those screenings existing. The Tuesday weird guy screenings, and you don't want photos of that to get out where someone takes a picture of a Taylor Swift screening on a Tuesday at 2:00 afternoon, and it's a lot of Claytons there. So it may have been a strategic
I don't like to be
way.
used as an example. Thank you. But
Not to turn you into a genre of human, but we know it. We all know it's just a shorthand. And they probably didn't want those pictures getting out. But I do think the original idea was to make this as much of an event as possible. So just play it on the weekends. I don't know if they'll change that, because this weekend it's going to make its 150, 200 million. And I'm sure next weekend is going to be huge. So there may end up being hey, by popular demand, Tuesday, Wednesdays have been added. So, single guys in your 40s, creeps. Yeah, creep shows. They'll add creep shows, possibly.
Yeah.
But for right now, there are
at least
no creep
one
shows.
In the middle of the day for all the creep shows.
Right.
Just blast it out to our accounts. I mean, I'm an A-lister, so they know all my demographics. They know. They know I'm single. They know my age. They know my income level. They know. So blast it out.
They've seen your hats. Yeah.
They've seen the hats. Everybody's seen the hats. So I do think, but I agree here where, this is supposed to be a concert substitute, right? I mean, also people who've seen the concert live are going to want to relive it and go to this movie. But this is for a lot of people who didn't get that concert experience. So the thought process is the energy would not be the same.
Right.
If it's a Tuesday afternoon with a bunch of creepers.
Right.
And they're not singing the songs and they're spread so far apart and they're not making eye contact with each other. That's a whole different experience that I think Taylor Swift does not want to be associated with. So the weekends make sense when all the kids are off school and the guardians are available to take the children. Because there's going to be a lot of guardians, taking children, your parents, guardians, wrangling a bunch of young kids to these movies. And it's hard to do that on a Tuesday afternoon. You're going to do that on the weekend.
Yeah. They don't want the guardians to be on their own seeing this in the middle of the week. Yeah, no. I think it makes sense. And, the Taylor Swift concert series, she mostly plays on weekends. She basically does a 1 or 2 night residency at a stadium, takes off during the week, plays. So I think it's also trying to mimic the concert tour. But I think you're right. I think it's mostly her not wanting there to be social media photos of these Tuesday afternoon creep show showings. So in that, it's probably good for the brand. So this is going to be huge. And, there's going to be a lot of, like Matt brought up earlier, people who are going to see this movie who maybe don't normally go see movies. Same thing with the Barbenheimer phenomenon. And I think it's really important. And one of our listeners, wannabe oh boy, Austin, sent us a great email, and he mentioned the idea of what trailers are going to play before this Taylor Swift movie. And so I'll throw out to you guys, what do we think of the stuff coming out the next few months where it's imperative that they get their trailer in front of this movie? Austin threw out the Hunger Games remake, sequel, prequel, whatever that is, Songs and Fire of Snakes. And that would be an important one. You've got a strong female lead action hero that would probably play well to the Swifties. Are there other movies that we think they got to get their trailer? If they got to pay Taylor a bribe herself, they got to get this trailer in front of it.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at the release calendar coming up. I think, Priscilla would probably like to be a trailer that plays before this movie.
Mhm.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Beyonce have like her own concert film coming out?
Yep.
Later
December
this
December.
Yeah, so I'm sure that would make a lot of sense. I would not be surprised if that was on there. I think the Hunger Games movie is another one that's a very logical trailer that would play before a Taylor Swift concert movie.
I got a big one, guys.
Okay. Lay it on us.
The Marvels.
Yeah.
Marvels.
Mhm.
Because that is right in the wheelhouse for the demo that is going to go see this. And I do think Marvel might be able to snooker some people into seeing this movie if they're so excited after the experience of they had Barbie, now they have Taylor, now they're going to have Marvels. Maybe this is going to be great.
Right.
And so I think that residual goodwill from both of those films might sort of get a runoff effect into Marvels and maybe prop up that opening weekend a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's the phenomenon we saw last summer where something like Elvis really benefited from being a trailer connected to all the Top Gun Maverick screenings in May and June of last year. Yeah. The Marvels, you're right. That probably needs it the most because the buzz on just everything superhero is so bad right now. That movie in particular, for different reasons, is got its bad buzz. You don't have the stars promoting yet. I mean, that's the type of movie where I don't know what Marvel could offer Taylor Swift. I mean, I don't know what anyone could offer Taylor Swift, but getting her to cut some kind of like, hey, thanks for joining me on my ERAS tour, the movie, and November, whatever, the Marvels is coming out. I mean, just even as I say that out loud, I couldn't imagine Taylor Swift doing anything like that, but something that they could get some kind of special Taylor approval of the Marvels.
Maybe they could get Marvel to like definitively debunk the rumor that she's playing Dazzler in some upcoming movie, unless she actually is. And then maybe they could just pay her extra for doing that to plug the Marvels now.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't have to play that character as the lead in a movie. If it was just known that they were doing a Harry Styles-esque stinger where Taylor Swift will dress up as a superhero and never be seen again, much like Harry Styles, never actually appear ever again in a movie, but it's just like, you go see the Marvels, there will be a stinger with Taylor Swift in some kind of cape. That
would sell some
$100 million.
tickets.
Yeah,
that would sell some tickets.
That would be huge. And you know what, Gene, if he was alive and he saw the biggest pop star in America dressed up in a disco queen outfit like Dazzler, go back to the OG Dazzler. I mean, 2 thumbs way up just from Gene.
Yes.
Now here's a big one, guys. I think you do Wonka, but this is the debut of Chalamet singing, because this is a musical. Remember, this is a musical.
They're keeping that a part of it under wraps.
But you reveal that before the Taylor Swift concert film. You've got maybe the number one heartthrob for young people at the moment, Timothy Chalamet.
Mm-hmm.
Singing up there on a big screen before Taylor Swift, that's an opening act right there.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I was going to say that one more was Wonka because it does. I would imagine that there is some overlap between the younger Taylor Swift fans and the Timothy Chalamet fans. I did think that connection made some sense.
Yes.
And they've never been rumored to have been dating, right? Chalamet and Taylor Swift. That's never been one.
Now you've gone way outside of my area
Right.
of expertise. I mean,
Right.
For all I know, they have been. I have no idea. I just figured that those audiences, that like the
Yes.
Venn diagram was
Yeah.
there was some overlap there, basically.
This would be, and I know right now the actors can't promote anything, but they're doing their strategically showing up at the screening of a short film by the director of the movie that I'm in, but I can't promote. They're doing that type of thing, which God bless, Could you see Timothy Chalamet just showing up at a screening of the Taylor Swift movie in the next week or two? And he doesn't dress like Willy Wonka. There's no chocolate bars involved. Or maybe he gets
knows?
a chocolate bar as a concession, but doesn't.
Candy falls out of pockets all the time. So
right.
He could just be walking around, here a Wonka bar falls out of his pocket. It's an accident. He likes them. He started eating them when he was shooting the film. He carries them with him. He carries a lot with him. They fall out.
Yeah.
They fall out. Maybe one has a golden ticket in it to like to the premiere, whatever. Oh my goodness, it dropped out of my pocket. Can somebody find it? These things happen.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for stars to promote their movies, but not promote them. Just go see the Taylor Swift movie this weekend.
Be seen there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll get to our official predictions in a second. Matt, we always end the preview episodes by predicting our top 5 for the weekend.
Okay.
Wanted to get your take on the big movie that opened last weekend was Exorcist Believer. And a couple of months ago you would have thought, and I'll give it to Clayton, he was down on this movie from months ago. He did not think this would be as big as I thought, some other people thought. It definitely underperformed. It came in, Clayton, like we said, we did Sunday night, and at that point it was 27 million. This movie ended up opening to $26.4 million.
We called it.
Was the opening weekend. We did think it would go lower. So, Matt, that movie underperformed. Have you seen, first of all, Exorcist Believer? Neither of us have seen it yet. And what is your take on, why that movie underperformed? And this was supposed to be a big franchise. They spent $400 million Universal to own this film, own the rights to this. What do you think of The Exorcist, both as its opening weekend and as a potential franchise?
Well, I did see the movie, and I did think it really stunk. So I wasn't on that level. I can't say I'm shocked that it underperformed because I can't imagine, just from like Friday to Sunday. It's not like people were going to be walking out of the theater on Friday and telling everyone they knew, wow, you got to go see the new Exorcist. To me, the issue with like spending that much money on anything, but specifically on The Exorcist is The Exorcist, in my mind, just my opinion, is a fabulous, iconic, classic movie that has never produced a single like genuinely good sequel. And it has and I feel like it has any reputation at all besides being one of the great horror movies, the first one, that's its reputation, is that it's a great horror movie and a terrible like horror franchise. Exorcist 2, is like people like it's notorious as like one of the worst sequels ever made. I don't actually think that one is that bad. I think it's actually, I don't think it's good, but it's so deranged. Like I would much rather watch that than rewatch the new Exorcist, for example, which is probably it's slicker. It makes more sense, I suppose, but it's just not going for the same kind of swings and having the same gonzo spirit as as Exorcist 2: The Heretic. Exorcist 3, it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I'm
a big 3 guy.
People like P3, I guess, is probably the one now that probably has the best reputation. Kind of has become a little bit of a cult movie. So that's, at best you could say it's kind of a cult movie. Then the next movie was so I don't know. I mean, I don't really like either one, but clearly the people who made it had so little faith, haha, no pun intended,
Mhm.
in the first fourth movie that they completely scrapped it and made a whole other fourth movie with a totally different director and a totally different tone. And that one was really bad. And it was kind of so bad that
Dominion, right?
well, that one is no Dominion prequel to The Exorcist is the one they scrapped and then
The
eventually
unfinished
did,
Schrader one.
and then they
Yeah.
did release it on home video, which I don't think is all that great either, even though I am a Paul Schrader fan, and it's sort of it's at least trying for something, I suppose. I haven't seen that one in a long time either, but I certainly I didn't watch it thinking, what were those maniacs doing throwing this masterpiece away?
Mhm, mhm.
But I would probably rate it slightly ahead of the one they did release, which was more just kind of like generic horror schlock. I think it's that one's called Exorcist: The Beginning, maybe. I'm blanking right
Yes,
now,
I think so, yeah.
but so
Every horror franchise needs to have a the beginning sequel at some point.
right. Well, every human has to have a beginning of their colon as well. I mean, that's just biology.
True.
And that's also a great line for a Saw sequel. I
Mhm.
could see him saying that.
Yes. So basically, that was we just ran down all those movies. Would you pay $400 million to make the next one of those? Again, I say that while fully acknowledging the Exorcist,
Right.
and by the way, The Exorcist Believer does not really have an exorcist in it. So think about that also. Spoiler alert, they sort of kind of forgot to put an exorcist in this movie.
Is it a sort of like we're all the Exorcist type of twist?
That's part of it, and I certainly don't
Everyone
want to
is their
spoil
own
this
exorcist. Yeah.
masterpiece. But it's more like there really isn't, like, there is a Catholic priest who is sort of present in a few scenes, and if you want to be very technical about it, I guess qualifies as an exorcist, although he's not like introduced that way.
Right.
But it's more about a pair of possessed girls and their parents and how they try to solve this dilemma via like some sort of like multi-faith exorcism, I guess.
Okay.
Which
Hands Across America exorcism
I
situation.
mean, that's you make a joke, but that's almost like really what the movie is.
Yeah,
And whatever. I mean, they were trying to go for something. I don't think it worked, but to me, it was more like just like you're sitting there, and at a certain point, it dawns on you, going, I'm watching a movie called The Exorcist, and there isn't really an exorcist in this movie. If there is, he's like the 8th or 9th or 10th most important character.
Right.
And now, granted, there's important characters in The Exorcist who are not The Exorcist, but there are like several Exorcist characters and priests who are very important to that movie. But anyway, and again, I'm digressing because
it is. I mean, listen, we've said it's a tough franchise in the horror space because there's no villain who's iconic. I mean, there's the possessed, the Linda Blair.
Pazuzu.
There's
Yeah,
Pazuzu. You're gonna come on. Pazuzu is iconic.
Pazuzu is iconic, but iconic as Linda Blair.
Right. No, I know. I'm teasing because I didn't think anyone but me knows who Pazuzu is.
Clayton's been talking.
And that's just because I have his
for
name
weeks and
tattooed on
weeks.
my shoulder. But that was we don't need to get into that.
Yeah.
But that's for another book.
I
you
was
write your life story.
Exactly. So I surprised that it did as as poorly as it did, or as well as it did, I guess. I mean, just because there isn't a ton going on, I thought you could maybe bring some people in just because they want to go see a horror movie in October. But other than that, the movie really didn't have a ton going for it.
Well, let's talk about the missed opportunity.
That's what I was
for Extra Swift. And the more we've been talking here, and I know not to go back to the creeps, but we have to go back to the creeps. I feel like both of these movies would have benefited to have the Friday the 13th opening, to have it be Extra Swift, so that people like myself can go see the Taylor Swift movie by myself because I'm completing the second half of a challenge. I already saw Exorcist, or I'm on my way to see Exorcist. Now it's like, well, I just went to the Taylor Swift movie. No, if it was Extra Swift, I am being part of a larger cultural movement. I am seeing both movies in one day. I am just completing the circuit. And so I
Right.
think it's leaving money on the table for both these movies and a lot of money for the Taylor Swift movie because the creeps are going to stay home. I think that is something that we're realizing right now, that this was a missed opportunity for both films.
I think it's definitely a bigger missed opportunity for The Exorcist. That movie would have made more money this weekend opening with Taylor Swift than it did make last weekend. I think that's pretty clear. Just the eventness of it would have helped. I didn't think of that, but it's true. There's some amount of a single creep could have went this weekend, and the parents could have pointed out that creep and said, "Don't be scared, Cindy. Don't be scared, Timmy. He's a creep who has to do this so he could see both movies in the Extra Swift meme."
Right.
And
Yeah.
then they'd say, okay, it's for a meme. I'm not scared of him anymore.
Yeah.
But what's the meme if I go by myself this weekend?
You can't do, you're not completing the meme if you go this weekend. They're
No.
right to be scared of you if you go this weekend. So I think it's time for us to give our top fives for this
Well, let's
weekend,
do
our
it.
top five predictions. So Matt, as the guest, you could choose to go first, second, or third. If you'd like to kick off to give
I'm
your
gonna
top
I'm
five.
gonna go third because I am not a box office expert like you guys. So I'm gonna assess what your picks are, and then I'm gonna judge accordingly and proceed accordingly.
Got it. Price is Right style for Matt. So Clayton, then you could go first and
Well,
give
of
us
course,
your.
I'm
give
not going
us-
to go first.
All right. Well, then I'll go first. All right. Here I am
Okay.
going first. So obviously the Taylor Swift movie, the Eras Tour, the movie will be number one. So we had our wannabe old boy Austin wrote in and he said he's going bananas. He predicted 181. That feels a little high to me, but I'm going
Yeah.
to go slightly banana. And I think it's going to get over the Barbie opening number. I'm going 160 for the Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, the movie. It sold 100 million already. This thing is going to be one of those. People see the lines. I want to get on the line. So I think it's hitting 160. Number two is, I guess by default, it has to be The Exorcist because it made 26 million last weekend. And even at a gigantic drop, if this thing drops 70%, that's still making like 10 million or so. So I think number two is Exorcist Believer. Number three is where there's a little debate. Could it be, is it still going to be Paw Patrol or will Saw creep ahead? I think Paw Patrol moves to number three, Saw number four, and Creator number five. It's Creator or The Blind. The Blind, of course, is a Fathom event movie that would be in its third weekend. I think it's kind of tricky. I think a lot of that audience will probably see the Taylor Swift movie. So The Creator will be number five. So it really is my
You
prediction.
think the
is pretty-
blind audience is going to go see Taylor Swift?
I mean, listen, that's a church bus movie, but I think it's a movie, middle America movie. I think that audience is also going to see Taylor Swift. But either way, The Blind, third weekend of a church bus Fathom event, it's a stretch to think that movie is still going to be a contender.
Well,
in
we
its
don't know
third
how
weekend.
many theaters it's going to retain either.
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty safe picks for me. I do think it's going to be Taylor Swift number one, and then everything moves down a spot. I don't
a slam
see
dunk.
anything that's going to flip-flop. But Clayton, do you see it any differently? Do you see any flip-flopping going on in 2 through 5?
Well, let's get to Taylor
Yeah.
Swift, number one, slam doink of all slam
Yeah.
doinks. There's never
Yeah.
been more of one. But, it's very interesting because people talk about No Way Home as sort of, a yardstick that this could possibly reach. And that had the 3 Spider-Men.
Yes.
This
there's only
has
one.
all eras of Taylor Swift.
Okay.
I mean, so there is a parallel there.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
I'm not gonna go as crazy as that, which would be $260 million. I don't know if that is possible,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 172
Wow.
because I just
Wow.
think with the added Thursdays, and I just think this is a must see event weekend of. I just think
Mhm.
this is a must see. It's gonna suck up all of the air. So that's my number one. I think number two, I do think is gonna be Exorcist Believer, and I do think there's gonna be some runoff here. People who are gonna maybe see the Taylor Swift, then they, get a little bit nervous and decide to go see The Exorcist instead.
Mhm.
And so that's gonna be number two. Paw Patrol number three, definitely. The Rats Need Their Cheese. This is the only thing for kids at the moment.
Mhm.
Then Saw, which I think is gonna have a great hold because as much as Exorcist Believer is still gonna be above it, that's not gonna be the case for many more weekends. I think we're gonna see Saw holding very strong here. And then, God, it's hard to go with anything but the creator here
Yeah, it's just what would
because
flip-flop over it. It's Haunting in Venice feels so done at this point.
yeah, The Nun
Yeah.
is done. The Nun is done. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty standard. I think the only question is how high does Taylor Swift go?
Yeah. So Matt Singer, author of Opposable Thumbs, it's your time to give a prediction for Taylor Swift the Eras Tour, the movie.
What was
I
Pat? What was your number?
I went 160. Clayton went 171.
Yeah, yeah.
72.
I kind of think
172.
it's right. I think it's gonna. I might say like 165. That was gonna
Okay.
kind of go right in the middle there. Yeah.
Good.
Hmm.
Um. And yeah. And I mean the other. I could see. I think Exorcist will be 2. I could see maybe Saw being number 3. And
I'd love
Paw
to see it.
Patrol 4. Those, I mean, or either way, they're being kind of close. I think
Yep.
your point about there's not a lot else for kids out there right now is very well taken and very true. And as a parent, I have had this dilemma where you got nothing to do and you want to take your kids to the theater and there ain't nothing to see. So, and right now there really is like almost nothing else in wide release to take a kid to. So you're right. I don't know. Maybe even after saying that, I thought Saw could be number 3. Maybe actually, I think maybe I think Paw Patrol probably will be 3, and then
Yep.
Saw 4 and Creator 5.
So
So
yeah,
there you go.
I think it's going to be a really exciting weekend to see where this Taylor. I mean, this Taylor Swift number. It who knows? We could be coming in on Sunday night, Monday morning, and we're looking at a $200 million opener. It's that up in the air for this movie. So, Matt, thank you for joining us today. So, again, could you remind the Swifties and
Right.
all of the wannabe O boys, wannabe O girls, wannabe O people
People.
what your book is and when it's coming out?
Yeah, it's Opposable Thumbs: How Siskel and Ebert Changed Movies Forever. It comes out October 24th. You can get it, anywhere. If you Google the title, it should come up. Or if you like Amazon, if you like somewhere else, you can find it just about anywhere, Barnes and Noble or whatever. And or you can look at my website, matt-singer.net. Someday maybe I'll own matt-singer.com, but not right now. So, but you can find links there. You can find out where I'm doing signings, and we're doing things where it's like screenings, not with the Taylor Swift movie, mind you, screenings
Mhm,
of
mhm.
older movies that Siskel and or Ebert liked, instead of just your typical kind of like book talk kind of thing. So we're having some fun with it. So some places we're showing one movie, some places we're showing 2 movies, and letting the audience decide which one they want to, you can pick which of 2 screenings you want to go to, the Gene pick or the Roger pick, that
Oh, I
kind of
love it.
thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and doing some Q&As, some signings. So yeah, that you can also find that at matt-singer.net. I got to get better at saying that. Like I have to get better at saying Taylor Swift's name. And and otherwise I'm writing over at ScreenCrush.com, and I'm on various social medias at Matt Singer. That's about it.
Cool. Very
Now, Matt,
exciting.
we both were able to read your book. It is a great book.
Oh,
And
good. I'm
going to
glad you
urge,
enjoyed it.
it's awesome. It ends sad, but I mean, we knew
Spoiler
it was
alert.
going to,
Yeah.
kind of like Titanic. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't experience it, because it's an emotional
Right.
roller coaster.
Yes.
But what I'll say is, the holiday season's coming up. People are like, what do I buy the people in my life, right? Why not buy this book? And the reason being is that, number one, it's a great book. People need to remember and honor these two men, but also it's great because you can send it to the relatives you like. Here, I'm sending it to my Aunt Arthur. 2 thumbs up, Aunt Arthur. Here you go. You can also buy it for
great
people
card, yeah.
that you don't like Uncle Mike. Here you go, Uncle Mike. I had to get you a present, but 2 thumbs down, Uncle Mike. Here you go.
Yeah.
It is one of those presents that you could give to anybody. And you know what? Even if they get thumbs down, they're still going to read the book and love it, because that's the kind of book it is.
Yeah, I love it. It lends itself to a great card along with the gift. So
absolutely.
So
and it does make a good gift. There's a lot of moms and dads and aunts and uncles out there that enjoyed that show and remembered and would enjoy a book about it. So yes, I do agree with that.
There
or
you
children
go.
or any, like, I don't know about an infant. They probably can't read yet, but of anyone of reading age, I feel like is right in the sweet spot.
And infants just like whatever you read to them, they just
you
like
could
hearing
read it
sounds.
to one. That's correct. You could read it to an infant, and I'm sure they would be very, very happy for sure.
An infant just wants to know that you're there, so read them this book.
The soothing sound of my prose would make them very contented. Or there's an audiobook that I read the audiobook. You could have my voice, play my voice for your infant for 9 hours and 35 minutes. I think that would be a very good thing to introduce a child to, my voice for 9 hours.
Oh,
I love put it on the belly for pregnant women. Put it right on the belly.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's great. And then you could leave the room. You just play Matt Singer's
I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
I'll take it from here, guys.
Yeah.
Set it and forget it.
Yep.
Love it. So, of course, buy Opposable Thumbs. Order it now. Comes out October 24th, but pre-order it. Of course, we are on YouTube, so you can watch the show on YouTube. Follow us on social media at the BO Boys Pod. Wanna BO senior intern Christopher doing a great job with the vertical videos on social media for us. Of course, email us, theboboyspodcast@gmail.com. Love getting your predictions. Let us know if you saw the Taylor Swift The Eras Tour, the movie, this weekend. Let us know if you were the creep that was there and how that experience went for you, because creeps got to go see this movie. So let us know how that went. theboboyspodcast@gmail.com. Give us 5 stars on all podcast platforms, but especially Apple Podcasts, the only one that actually really matters. And I think that's it. I think we've done it, Clayton. Nothing else to say.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything like to say.
No.
Except for until next time.
We'll smell you at the box office.
Box office.
Nailed it. And
nailed it.
That